Episode 51, and we turn to Revelation 20, verse 7 and 8. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. When you look at the future, it's clear that one day we will have this glorious kingdom of God on earth. And we know that during that period of time, the demons and the devil have been cast in the dungeon, in the prison, and that they ultimately will be thrown into the lake of fire. So they can no longer have their demonic influence on people on earth. By the way, sometimes people say, well, that's a medieval kind of faith. Then the people believed in demons and spirits and in the devil, but we are enlightened, rational human beings. We have science and technology. We don't believe in these fairy tales. Well, I think the devil and his demons are very glad when you take that position, because if you don't believe in them, they're free, even more free, to act as it pleases them. But then they are thrown in the dungeons. They cannot do anything anymore. And the nations will experience how good it is that the Son of God, who is the Son of Man, Jesus Christ, is sitting in the center of the world in Jerusalem, and that he will rule the nations with an iron rod, an iron scepter, as Psalm 2 says. That he is giving the righteous rule. There's a beautiful passage in the Bible that makes it very clear how beautiful that kingdom will be, that kingdom on earth. You can read it in Isaiah 2. It says this: in the last days, in the far future, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as chief among the mountains. It will be raised above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. What is the mountain of the Lord's temple? That's the Temple Mount. That's Mount Zion, Mount Moriah, in the heart of Jerusalem. One day that mountain will be lifted up. Today it's not the highest mountain. If you stand on the Mount of Olives, you can look down on the Temple Square. So Mount Zion is lower than even the other hills that surround it. But then it will be lifted up. Earthquake, geological activity. The mountain, the Mount of Olives will split in two. The prophet Zechariah said there will be a valley running towards the Dead Sea, etc. All kind of changes will take place there. But then that mountain will be lifted up, and all nations will stream to it. Many people will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. What is the house of the God of Jacob? That's the temple of the God of Israel. So, in the future, in the kingdom, there will be a temple. And the nations will be focused on Jerusalem, on Jesus the King, who will rule from Jerusalem, and on the temple, where the holy presence of God, the Shekinah glory, will be present. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, so that we may walk in his path. The law, Torah, will go out from Zion. Torah, law, means the directions to life that God has given to Israel. It's the first 5 books of Moses. The heart of it are the 10 commandments. And it shows you the way to live in peace and justice. And so the law will go out. God will teach the nations. He will teach us his ways so that we may walk in his path. The law will go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. That's why there's an everlasting covenant with Jerusalem. God's holy name will dwell there again. He will judge between the nations, and he is Jesus, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He will settle the disputes for many peoples. Today, when nations have a difference of opinion with one another, they go to the United Nations to try to find a solution. And if they cannot find a solution, they most of the times go to war. And whoever wins the war apparently was right. Then no more. Then he will say, this is how we solve your problem. And it's not free advice. It's not take it or leave it. This is how it must happen. And I rule with an iron rod. If that is the case, there's no need to have a war anymore. So what you do with your weapons, with your tanks and your rockets, and melt them down, turn them into agricultural tools. And that's exactly what they will do in the kingdom. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, and the military academies can be closed, for they will not even train for war anymore. How to wage a war is not taught anymore. Peace, prosperity, righteousness under the leadership of Jesus. But the heart of the nations is not really in it. Because even at the end of the 1,000 years, when they have experienced the beautiful reign of God and Christ, although they were forced into it, when the devil is released again, immediately he grabs their hearts. And it shows you that the heart has not been changed, not even in those beautiful circumstances. And he draws the nations from the 4 corners towards Jerusalem. But there's no battle whatsoever. Then immediately Jesus steps in and simply ends it. So now we're approaching the final stage of God's kingdom on earth. And so, if you know all this, prepare yourself for it and understand God is in control. Whatever happens on earth, even the most terrible things, he says, don't you worry, I know about it, it will happen, it must happen, but it is not without me. I will lead you through it in an incredible way until you end in glory on my side forever.
Alpha